early in my career, the daunting task of getting a building permit, and like the fact that the building inspector was this evil person that was going to deny you an inspection and fail you miserably. None of that is, well, the majority of that isn't really true. What's up, guys? Welcome back to NS Podcast. Let's talk about what we got going on, what we got coming up. I got some good, cool. I was going to call it ghoul announcements for the future of this company and others. And then we're going to get to one of the questions that we got after last week's podcast. So what we got going on, we got a short week. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We're going to be taking Friday off as well because everyone likes that extra Friday day. My phone is vibrating over here. Excuse me for a second. Everyone likes that extra day off. And one thing I just want to call attention to is that we also shut down from Christmas Eve all the way to New Year's Day. We do not work that week. The whole company has it off. Either way, what we got going on, we have the demolition wrapped up, site preparation all wrapped up at our Needham project. The site guys are actually pulling their equipment off, and we are into permitting for the future building, or the future home that we're going to be building with Steve Teak. We also got through our demolition and asbestos abatement on our new Back Bay project. The asbestos was removed and abated. We are clear to go. So we're going to get our mechanical trades back in to that project. We're going to make safe all the electrical. We actually have an electrical engineer joining us on that job. Why, you might ask? Well, it's a residential project, but if you guys remember, we found the main feed to the entire building coming into this particular part of the building, which is the lowermost unit. It was done in a way that's not code compliant, and frankly, now that we have uncovered it, we now need to take some ownership of it. So we have an electrical engineer coming in because it's just an abundance of knob and tube and just poorly done electrical. So we figured the best way to look at this is how do we make this building safe, make sure it's code compliant, et cetera, et cetera. We'll also have our mechanical and plumbing teams on site to make sure all of that stuff is cut and capped. And, our mechanical system we're actually going to use for temporary heat. We'll keep that heat going, make sure that place doesn't get freezing. And then plumbing, we'll make sure that we cut cap what we need to and prep for construction. We'll also utilize one of the bathrooms for construction. It's always smart to do that, being that we're in the city. We don't always have an area where we can put a porta-john outside, so we typically will utilize one of the existing bathrooms as a quote-unquote construction bathroom. Our Charlestown project with Kelly McGill. Back Bay. That's with John Buckley. We actually met him and the girls over at Hayes O'Neill last week to talk about structural and get a sense of what we're going to be looking at for staircase. We even talked about some millwork details, which super exciting to see that stuff come together. As I'm sitting in our millwork shop, it's a big part of our business, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. Our Charlestown project with Kelly McGill, we are wrapping that up. We're actually going to be deferring some of the work till the spring, primarily some of the outside work. We have a winter moratorium here where we can't work on the street. It makes it more difficult to work on the sidewalk and things like that. Unfortunately, we're dealing with some neighbors that are frustrated with, I think, the construction in the neighborhood, giving us a little bit of a hard time on that sidewalk. So we want to play good neighbor, and we're going to reassess in the springtime for some of this exterior work, which is completely fine. It's not mission critical, but we're working through the work that we will complete before the winter, and we're excited to get that place photographed and hopefully put together a video showcasing all the great work the team has done over there. We're also wrapping up, we're actually revisiting our Cambridge project this week. Now that the client has lived there for about 30 days, has had an opportunity to move in, unpack, get some stuff in place. We actually deferred some of the remaining punch list items for this time. That way he could be there, kind of experience the space, and if there was anything additional that needed to be taken care of. We're also waiting for some parts to come in for, I think, the electrical system in regards to a motion sensor. But we had teed it up where he got to move in, he got to understand the space, and we were able to add a couple things to that punch list to make sure that when we came back, we could get everything tuned up. One thing that we do as well with our millwork is that we're going to want to revisit this job 6 months from the time they move in, because the cabinets are going to get loaded up. Everything's adjusted, completely empty. So all the doors look great, but then you load it up with, 100 pounds of stuff in every cabinet. Now the cabinets, might move slightly. The reveals might be, slightly off, temperature change, all of these things. We want to get in there 6 months from now, go through and fine tune any adjustments and make sure that everything is looking nice. And furthermore, we're actually putting together an O&M manual, basically a maintenance manual for everything that we've installed, a list of all the products that we used, who services them, how they get serviced, what's the warranty behind them. That's something we're going to put together for every one of our jobs that we can hand over to the client. And we're talking about doing that in a print version, which will probably just be a pretty book that goes on a shelf and never opened. With the handful, maybe a handful of select clients might open that book, but also file it digitally for the client, but really for us. So when we do get that maintenance call, and that actually tees up something that we're working on in the future. We'll get to that in a second. Our small projects division, we actually have a project in the South End that we're working on with a client that's been with us since we started our business. Been doing small projects on that. They're actually going to be hopping in over there, doing some window replacements, waiting on Boston to give us the A-OK to do that. And I feel like how could I forget our Rhode Island build? Of course, we are... Brian's been down there getting everything ready for slab prep. We have our slab on metal deck all prepped. That will be the first concrete slab that we will be installing. So the thing with the metal deck is that it actually can't support the weight of concrete while the concrete is still wet. So we actually have to temporarily shore that deck underneath the garage so it does not belly when the concrete is placed on it. So there's a temporary wall under that slab on deck. We'll place the concrete, let that cure. And the reason is usually you're seeing garages, they're basically backfilling the garage with dirt and placing a concrete slab right on the grade, and you're parking your car there. We have a shop underneath the concrete deck. So similar to, like, say, a parking garage where you basically you can park on a level and have space below it. Similar situation here. In this case, we are placing the concrete on a metal deck. I compare it to a parking garage, which is probably a poor way to do that because most parking garages are precast concrete, but you get the idea. We have space underneath the garage that will be quote unquote living space, but in fact a workshop which has a killer view of the Providence River. Before I get into what we got coming up, some of the cool announcements we got going on, this podcast is brought to you by Rent-A-Run. Rent-A-Run is an app that we use. It's basically building materials on demand. You can get on your computer. You can order that stuff. We were literally spending, let's break this down. If you, in the middle of the day, it's 10 o'clock, you realize you need something to get through the rest of the day, you got to run out to the hardware store. That time, the moment you realize that you need it, you're basically taking your tool belt off or getting up from your desk or whatever it is, getting in your car, driving, or your truck, driving to the hardware store, getting what you need, getting back in the truck, getting back to the job site, putting your tool belt back on, getting back to work. It's a 2-hour ordeal at minimum. Never mind if there's traffic, never mind if there's a long line, never mind if you can't find it at one store and you have to go to another. It's just a waste of time. So Rent-A-Run makes it easy. You can hop on the app. You can order exactly what you need, and it's going to be there in 2 hours. If you guys are interested in learning more, podcast.rentarun/ns and sign up. And yeah, sign up. I was going to say something else about you realizing how great it is, but I think you'll immediately know that based on the fact that you're not leaving the job site. The job site that's what I want to talk about. They bring coffee as well. So if you're a coffee drinker, they'll bring you a fresh pot. So what we got going on, what we got working on behind the scenes, we have 2 really big announcements for January 1st. I'm actually not going to tell you what they are. You're going to have to stay tuned for January 1st. But let's just say that they have a lot to do with what has made NS Builders such a great company. And I'm excited about both of those announcements. That's all I'm going to mention right now. Secondly, we're also, this is another announcement, and not necessarily one, but we've been working with a program for our maintenance of our homes and our projects. And if you guys are an avid listener of the Modern Craftsman podcast, I don't know what episode it was specifically, but we had someone on there that talked about a program that would help automate the home care program of their company. And we have been working with them behind the scenes to get this implemented into NS Builders, because we realized that we were doing this already. Clients were asking us to maintain their home, to service their home, to do small projects, and we wanted a way to basically implement this into our business. So we went ahead, Rachel was brought into NS Builders. She's been working from the admin side and also helping build this program. And we just recently hired a home care tech who has been handling all of our small projects, warranty calls, and overall just maintenance of these homes. And super excited to implement that into all of our projects going forward, and hopefully be in a position where that just comes automatically standard with all of our builds. I posted last week on Instagram about this drain that we had that leaked, and I'm going to tell you the story about that because a handful of you asked what happened. But we were able to, rather than taking one of my PMs who ran that job and having them go to that job and taking them away from what they were responsible for in that time and that day, that could throw off their whole day. They could be there all day and then something else suffers. We now have someone that is in charge of that is overseeing that, and and can go to that site, meet with the plumber, figure out what's going on, assess the situation, and get the situation corrected. And in this case, it was a short time from getting on site to realizing where the leak was coming from, to taking it apart, to coordinating with the plumber, getting the plumber on site, making sure that joint was sealed, put back together, and made sure that we were communicating with the client. There was no balls dropped at that point. Specifically, we had tied in a PVC drain into the sink that I posted on Instagram. You can go over there and check it out. There's a PVC drain that connects into an existing PVC drain line underneath the floor. Unbeknownst to me if it was an existing fitting or not, but long story short, one of the fittings had a tiny, tiny leak. So when the sink was running constantly, you would get a drip, maybe one little drip, maybe every 15 seconds. Very, very slow. So reality is well, how would we have noticed that since it's not a lot of water and that sink isn't obviously running constant all the time? There was an existing plastic vapor barrier actually underneath that, in the floor joist underneath that cavity, which they had, the client was actually having their kitchen renovated below, and when they opened the ceiling up, that plastic vapor barrier actually had water in it. So that was a clear tell sign that something was leaking. And we got a camera, we snaked it up through kind of the wall cavity, and we could see that little drip, drip, drip. Got the plumber on site, they got that fitting repaired, and we got it taken care of. And like I said, put right back together and let the client know by the end of the day that, hey, you're good to go. Obviously apologize about the inconvenience, but everything has been taken care of. So we have a question that we got last week about permitting. Let me pull out my phone. I want to read it specifically and dig into it a little bit. So it came from another builder, but this I feel like is a good topic for if you're a homeowner thinking about building or renovating. This is a good topic that we can dig into. Can you give guidance on permitting? I've been waiting on a septic permit for 42 days now, and my lot is just sitting inactive. It's an unexpected month and a half of low interest, property tax, mowing, and delay to schedule this year. Thankfully, this is for a spec home, and he doesn't have an angry client at him. When doing new buildings or large remodels, how do you plan for permitting? Do you just set expectations early on with yourself and your clients that we will have to wait 2 months on permits, bank appraisals, etc.? So that's a great question, and I think something that I feel like I might have talked about this on the Modern Craftsman last week or this week, but I remember, it's especially early in my career, the daunting task of getting a building permit, and like the fact that the building inspector was this evil person that was going to deny you, an inspection and fail you miserably because they didn't believe in what you were doing. And if you went to the building department, you didn't know, how to pull a permit, then you were SOL and they weren't going to help you. None of that is, well, the majority of that isn't really true. And, in that situation where setting expectations, early, that's exactly what you need to do. But you can't set those expectations until you have an honest conversation with the building department. And any job that we're looking into, when we're talking about permitting, I can't answer the question like, hey, this is, we should be able to get this permit, turn around in 4 months. I'm usually having a conversation with the town. If I can go down to the town hall, I'll walk through like, hey, this is can you walk me through your process? What is a typical process for turnaround? And at that point, I'm usually not mentioning the address, just so we're not getting convoluted with what address it is if it's too early in the process, to kind of mix things up, as far as like, if they're going to start looking into the property like, oh, well, that, this one already has an open, like, I just want to understand the process and a normal situation. Hey, no problem. If you're looking to build a brand new house, you should allot for 4 weeks. And these are the people that you're going to have to talk to before you get to the building department. You have to go to the fire department and make sure that they're okay with it. You have to go to the Board of Health and make sure that there's an approved septic design. That you need to go to conservation and make sure that it doesn't trigger any conservation issues. And then figure out what those timelines, typically take. And if, this process, a lot of things switch to online recently. So in this case, maybe you can't go there. So I would have a phone call and just kind of walk through, get them to explain the expectations. Now we're going to communicate that back to the client. Now, the reason sometimes, sometimes the reason I don't mention the address is like, for example, we had a home that was, a historic home that we were considering demolishing, and good reasons why. Let's not talk about that, but good reasons as to why to demolish it. And I didn't want to mention the address too soon because I did not want to trigger anyone in the sense like, you can't demolish that house, like, and put a red flag on it and be like, hey, someone's going to come to the table and say they want to demolish this. Like, absolutely not. Like, before that gets to that, I want to understand the normal process. When we got to that point of, all right, we know this home is historic. Now let's have a conversation like, hey, we have this home. It is historic. We're considering doing a demolition permit. What's that process like? Well, this is the process. And then it's, okay, specifically, this is the home. Okay, well, we know that home and that's going to be difficult to demolish. Or, hey, we do know that home and that one's actually historically significant and it's on the registry, so we would never allow demolition of that property. Or, hey, we would allow demolition on that property, but you need to wait a 6-month waiting period from the time of permit or application. All of those things are going to weigh out. It's, again, just having these early conversations with the building department, understanding what their steps are, and then communicating that back to the client. We want to do that as early as possible. We're going to have that conversation with the building department as early as possible, and say it's 6 months or 12 months. We want to have that conversation early. I mean, like early, probably before we even have an agreement from pre-construction or contract, just so we understand. Because if it's going to be a 12-month delay, we want to know that immediately. And then we know that, hey, we have 12 months of pre-construction for this job, and we can set up what are our deliverables for the next 12 months. We don't have to, we're not going to wait and then find out it's a year later that we can get the permit when we're already through pre-construction. I'd rather know when that end date is, give us that goal to deliver on, and then utilize that time for planning, pre-construction, design, whatever the case may be. And like I said, it's oftentimes as early as just what city or what town it's in, and then we back off from that and realize, hey, we're in this town, it's going to take this long for permit, let's back off that and set that as a delivery date. And it really just stems down to having a good team, a good builder, a good architect that is being proactive, making sure that they're, being proactive and planning for these things, and making sure that they're asking the right questions at the right time to make sure that you're setting up the deliverables. And furthermore, truly when you're setting up the deliverables, then you're able to, you have targets. When you don't know what those deliverables are, or don't know when permit will be acquired or roughly acquired, you might just wait. And then when you get the permit, it's like, all right, now we should start pricing this. It's like, no, we know we're getting permit in 8 weeks, and we need to get a price before the permit is back in hand, or typically the price would be beforehand. I know I'm going to get corrected on that, but the point is that you want to utilize the time between understanding where the project is going to be and actually being permitted to do so. And the more structured that is, and the more you understand when those things are going to be put into place, the more efficient you are with your time. And ultimately, like, I think it just goes back to when you set the expectation with yourself, you're setting the expectation with the client. You know, it's just very clear as to what is happening, when it's happening, and everyone's on the same page. So hopefully that answered your question. If you do have another question, feel free to shoot me a DM at Nick Schiffer on Instagram or at NS Builders. You can also drop it in the comments below here on YouTube. And then make sure you go over to iTunes, drop a 5-star review, let us know how we're doing, get us up in those rankings, and give us a comment. Stay tuned for an episode of Site Visit as well as Revealed this week, and we'll chat with you soon.